Now I noticed that Robbie does another column, in the garden now. What should you be doing at this point? The weather is starting to warm up a little bit. We're starting to see the sun some more.
Right.
It's actually been a very wet, it's actually been a very wet season, a very wet winter.
Right.
What should the gardener be doing
Well,
now?
coming into the month of March, a lot of people now are kind of looking at, ready to get outside, of course, but
Right.
they're looking at mainly pruning back their perennials, basically coming back and just taking most of the dead growth off of that, because basically what they've done during the winter months is absorb their nutrients that they're going to need for the next growing season. So once the stems have died back completely, you can basically come back and cut those back now. Your ornamental grasses, cutting those back now is a good time. Pruning all your dormant trees, except for your spring flowering trees. You don't want to prune those down because those are going to be the early bloomers. If you come in and prune those now, you're going to be basically cutting off all the blooms. So anything, say for instance, like your crepe myrtles and that sort of thing, your hardwood trees, pruning them now is the time that you want to get those done. And basically have up to the point of when they start actually budding. The crepe myrtles are generally the last thing to start budding because they require so many warm days of temperature. So doing that, before they actually start budding out is a good thing. Putting down your pre-emergence for your weeds and so forth, it's a good time. Your crabgrass, applications and so forth for crabgrass on your turf. And basically you've got a few more weeks. It typically takes a certain number of warm temperature days for weeds to start germinating. We haven't had those days yet, so
think
now
about
it's
weeds already.
so now's the time to start planning for getting ready for those. If you don't get a jump on now, you'll have to use some type of post-emergent after they're germinated.
And what about the rules for bringing certain plants outside? How warm it has to be out, and when you should start planting seeds and stuff for the.
That's a good point too, because in the garden center business, we always have that last frost date, which in our area it's typically April 15th is when they say, because we've had frost up until that point.
Okay.
So you can start bringing plants outdoors, I would say probably the middle of the latter part of March, but you still have to be concerned with how cool the temperatures get at night. And same aspect from the garden center standpoint, we don't want to start bringing in too many nice lush plants too early, because if we do, we could have last minute frost and cause problems for plants.
Now would probably be the time to start planting indoors, the seeds.
Yeah, if you're going to start getting your beds and so forth, or your plantings, most people now are looking at probably setting out their onion plants, lettuce, and that sort of thing, early type vegetables. I mean, now would be an okay time to start doing that. And then any kind of early vegetables that you want to plant, if you want to go ahead and start germinating those, now would be a good time for you to be able to do that also.
What about in terms of, we've had such volatile weather in this region.
Right.
A couple of years ago we had a drought, and then the next spring was like poured and poured and poured and poured for weeks on end, and then we've had kind of a funny winter with all the snow and everything. Are there things that people need to be concerned about weather-wise, or certain ways to plan ahead so that whatever they plant isn't going to get?
Well, one thing that I would consider, especially with the way the weather has been in the last several years, would be people that have older established trees. Those are the things that you got to watch out for, because they've gone through the drought conditions, and now we've had so much moisture that it's loosened up a lot of the root system. So the trees are a little more susceptible to falling over if we have high winds and so forth.
That's why we've seen some of the
So
damage.
that's one of the things to keep in mind, that you may want to have someone check them out. And when I say someone, typically a good certified arborist can kind of tell you what's going to happen with the tree. I mean, you can bring in any kind of tree person, but they just may want to cut the tree down when they don't need to. But there's ways that you can kind of prevent things like that from happening by getting the proper guidance or proper information from a professional.
Okay.
And let's talk about some of the classes you offer, because you do on a regular basis offer some very informative classes about gardening.
Yeah. In the last couple of weeks, we just offered a pruning class, which we had some of our customers come in and actually learn the different techniques as far as the proper pruning techniques. I think that most people were interested in mainly was crepe myrtles. I mean, you see people basically butchering crepe myrtles back to practically nothing, and it's typically not the right way to do it, because over a period of years you just get a real nubby look with sprouts coming out of it. So
that's interesting, because I do see a lot of crepe myrtles that are trimmed way back.
Yeah, typically a good technique for pruning. Of course, you want to keep in mind considerations of where the tree's planted. If it's planted near a walkway or something like that, you would possibly maybe want to consider moving the plant, or picking a variety that's going to not grow as tall as the one that you've got planted. Typically pruning a crepe myrtle, you definitely don't want to prune back more than a foot below where it bloomed the previous year. So and it still maintains its shape and still, the natural look that it would have. So if you got a situation like that, I would recommend, first of all, considering relocating the tree. If from a standpoint of, it's going to cost too much, then you may just want to remove it, because you're basically going to have to prune back every year just like you pruned back from previous years. So over a period of time, it's just not going to look as natural as what it should.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Certainly.
And you can find out more information about the classes they offer, because I know you have bird feeding.
Yep, we have a bird class coming up this Saturday. For a class, we're going to have the professional guy that does the ad in the Charlotte Observer going to be coming up doing a birding class. And then in April, we have our, thank goodness, a spring event, which will be April 17th. And if anybody wants to find out more about us, you can always look up on our website and sign up and get our weekly news blast that goes out and find out more information about the company.
Great. And we always list all of their specials on lknsavings.com, and there's always quite a few great ones.
Amazing specials and such a variety of offerings too, between furniture and not just the plants, but vases and chimes.
Yeah, we have a lot of our furniture and accessories, and just for the customers and people, we're going to be carrying the new Summer Classics line, which we are in the process of getting that ordered and in place. So we'll be offering outdoor furniture and then accessories that go along with that also probably in the next few weeks.
Well, thank you so much, Keith. It's a pleasure having you on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.